1. Start with energy. Explain with authority. Highlight with emphasis. End with warmth. At this precise second, Ondas Holdings Inc. is trading at exactly 8.79 USD, experiencing a minor pullback of 0.13, which translates to a decline of roughly 1.46% as of this morning, December 4th. When you glance at the ticker for Ondas Holdings and see it slipping nearly 1.5%, the immediate, knee-jerk reaction for most retail investors is to lump it in with the rest of the speculative drone sector. The expectation with companies like Ondas, especially those sitting in the single-digit price range, is that they are science projects. You might think, great technology, cool videos of drones flying around, but where is the money? Where is the scale? The market sees a 1.46% drop and assumes it is just another day of volatility for a company burning cash to keep the lights on. That is the expectation, a perpetual startup trapped in pilot purgatory, forever testing their tech but never actually deploying it at a national scale. But the reality of what is happening inside Ondas right now is almost terrifyingly different. We are not watching a small drone startup anymore. We are watching the real-time construction of a massive, well-capitalized defense tech aggregator that has effectively just secured the financial firepower to buy its way to dominance. Today's price action is a distraction from the fact that Ondas has quietly raised a war chest of over $800 million in pro-forma cash, an almost unheard-of amount for a company of its historical size, to execute a roll-up strategy that is reshaping modern warfare and border security. To understand why this red candle at 8.79 USD is deceptive, you have to look at the sheer scale of the capital they have amassed. Most drone companies are begging for scraps, issuing shares just to make payroll. Ondas has flipped the script. They raised $855 million since June. Let that sink in. They didn't raise that money to pay the rent. They raised it to weaponize their balance sheet. The drop today is likely legacy shareholders digesting the dilution that came with that capital raise. But the smart money is looking at what that capital buys. It buys speed. It buys market share. It buys competitors. And that is exactly what they are doing. They are acquiring companies like Roboteam for ground robotics, SentryX for cyber counter-UAS, and 4M Defense for demining. This isn't a company trying to build a better propeller. This is a company building a system of systems, a unified architecture where air and ground robots talk to each other to secure a perimeter. The most explosive piece of reality that shatters the expectation of a struggling small cap is the news about the strategic government tender. Ondas was just selected as the prime contractor to develop a national autonomous border protection system. We are not talking about 5 drones watching a fence. We are talking about thousands of drones. This is a multi-phase program expected to kick off with a purchase order in January 2026. This fundamentally changes the revenue profile of the company. It moves them from selling units to selling national security infrastructure. When a government decides to replace a physical wall or a patrol car with a swarm of autonomous drones, they don't cancel that contract next month. It becomes a 10-year dependency. The market is still pricing Ondas like a vendor. The reality is they are becoming a utility for national defense. Let's dig into the trading volume we are seeing today. It is relatively restrained, which suggests that the massive selling pressure from the recent equity raises has largely subsided. The stock is consolidating near the $9 level, a psychological battleground. The fact that it's holding 8.79 USD despite the broader market chop tells us that there is a floor being put in by institutions who understand the new balance sheet dynamics. You have to realize that with nearly $840 million in pro-forma cash, the downside risk is mathematically buffered. The cash per share backing the stock is significant. This gives investors on Fidelity Investments or utilizing the Robinhood app a level of safety that simply didn't exist 6 months ago. You are no longer buying a distressed asset, you are buying a cash-rich holding company that is trading at a valuation that barely reflects its future growth curve. We need to talk about the Iron Drone system, because this is where the expectation versus reality tension is most acute. The expectation is that drones are the future of delivery or photography. The reality is that drones are the future of air superiority, and more importantly, the future of air defense. Iron Drone is Ondas's answer to the threat of hostile drones. It is a hunter-killer drone. It physically intercepts and disables enemy drones. They just secured back-to-back orders to protect major European airports. Think about the implications of that. Airports are the most regulated, safety-critical environments on Earth. If a European security agency trusts Iron Drone to operate autonomously near passenger jets to take down rogue drones, the technology is bulletproof. This isn't a prototype in a desert. This is active protection of critical infrastructure. The recent $8.2 million orders are just the tip of the iceberg. As drone threats proliferate, look at what is happening in Ukraine and the Middle East, every airport, every stadium, every power plant needs a dome of protection. Ondas sells the dome. Let's shift gears to the financials, specifically the Q3 2025 earnings, because the numbers are staggering. Revenue surged 580% year-over-year to $10.1 million. Now, skeptics will say, sure, but that's off a small base, and that is true. But look at the trajectory. They raised their full-year guidance to at least $36 million and set a preliminary target of $110 million for 2026. That is effectively a tripling of revenue in 1 year. This kind of hypergrowth is rare. It is the result of the acquisitions kicking in. When you buy a company like Roboteam, you instantly add their revenue to your books. This is the inorganic growth engine firing on all cylinders. But it's not just buying revenue, it's buying synergy. A customer who buys the Iron Drone for air defense is the perfect customer for the Roboteam ground robot for perimeter patrol. Ondas can now cross-sell across its entire portfolio, increasing the share of wallet with every defense client. There is also a massive, boring, but incredibly profitable side to this business that everyone forgets: the rail sector. Ondas Networks, the other half of the holding company, specializes in private wireless networks for railroads. They recently appointed Brent Lang, a veteran rail executive, to their board to push the adoption of the .16 standard. This is the expectation of boring infrastructure. The reality is, railroads are desperate to modernize. They need to run longer trains, faster and safer. They can't do that on 1980s radio technology. Ondas owns the patent-protected FullMax technology that allows them to do this. It is a monopoly-like niche. Once a railroad upgrades its network to Ondas's standard, they are locked in for decades. It is the razor and blade model, but the razor is a continent-spanning wireless network. This provides the steady, recurring cash flow that balances out the lumpy government contracts on the drone side. I want to pause here and ask you a question, because the ethics of autonomous defense are always a hot topic. Comment below. Do you believe that replacing human border guards with drone swarms is the future of national security? Or do you think the reliance on AI for border control is a risky gamble? I am genuinely curious to hear your thoughts on the moral and tactical implications of this technology. Continuing with the analysis, we have to look at the system of systems architecture. This is a military term that means everything connects. Ondas is not just selling a drone, they are selling the Ondas Autonomous Systems platform. This platform integrates the SentryX Tibertech, which can hack a drone out of the sky without firing a shot, the Iron Drone, which can smash it out of the sky, and the Optimus drone that watches everything. By owning all the layers, the eyes, the brain, and the fist, Ondas becomes the Apple of autonomous defense. You don't mix and match, you buy the whole ecosystem because it works better together. This vendor lock-in is powerful. It makes it very hard for a competitor to come in and displace just one part of the system. Let's look at the technical chart for today again. 8.79 USD. The stock has been volatile, ripping higher in November and cooling off now. This consolidation is healthy. The Relative Strength Index, RSI, was likely overheated after the massive run-up from the single digits. It needs to cool off. The support around $8.50 is critical. If you are using Interactive Brokers trading platforms or watching the charts on SoFi Invest, you want to see volume dry up on the selling days, like today, and spike on the green days. That is exactly what we have been seeing. The accumulation pattern is clear. The big funds are buying the dips. They are positioning themselves for the January 2026 catalyst of the Border Protection Order. If you wait until the order is announced, the stock will likely gap up to $12 or $15 overnight. You have to be in before the press release hits the wire. We also need to discuss the management team. Eric Brock, the CEO, is a former hedge fund manager. He thinks like an allocator of capital. He understands that in a high-interest rate environment, cash is king. That is why he was so aggressive in raising capital. He saw a window to secure the company's future, and he took it, even though it meant diluting the stock in the short term. This is the difference between a founder mentality and a financier mentality.